All right, so we are going to continue this morning talking about stewardship and kind of wrapping that up a little bit this morning. We're going to be in Matthew chapter 6 for the most part this morning. So if you want to stick your finger in Matthew chapter 6, we're going to start there first, and we're going to jump around and ultimately land there for the end as well. I had a couple memorable vehicles when I was growing up, when I was in high school, and maybe you had vehicles like these as well, ones that were not necessarily in good shape, but you loved them because you called them your own, right? So the first vehicle was kind of a hand-me-down. It was a vehicle that my grandparents had that then they kind of gave to my sisters, and each of my sisters drove it, and then it kind of got handed down to me, and I think I might have broke it or something. I can't remember. But it didn't run much after I drove it. It was an early 80s model Dodge Prospector pickup. You ever have one of these, or you ever seen one of these? It's like a boat, basically. I could almost lay down completely flat in the front seat. It was wide, it was long, it was sitting low to the ground. I mean, it was just kind of like a boat that you were driving down the road. And we could actually make it backfire on command, which was pretty fun. You could pop the accelerator really hard, and then it would backfire whenever you wanted it to. So that was great. The second vehicle, which I was a little bit more fond of than the Prospector, was a 1988 Ford Bronco 2. You ever seen those? The miniature version of the Ford Bronco? Yes. Loved this car. This was my car, actually. This was my vehicle. We bought it for like $1,000 off of a friend of ours. And it was great. 5-speed manual, 4-wheel drive. We went mudding with it. It was fantastic. When I was a junior in high school, I ran it into the back of a. You remember those Progressive insurance vehicles that have like Progressive painted on the side of them? And then at one point, it was about 2005, they started putting yellow and black, the reflective stripes on the back of them. I'm just saying that I ran into the back of one of those vehicles, and then all of a sudden you started seeing the reflective yellow and black show up on the back of these vehicles. Not saying there's a correlation there. So did that when I was a junior in high school. My dad and I kind of put this thing back together. It was kind of a two-tone blue color originally. We couldn't find the two-tone blue anymore, and so it had a red hood. So it stuck out quite a bit. Ran that thing for years and years. Ran that thing up through when Kimmy and I got married. So probably up until about 2009 before it just died. And now both of those vehicles, as much as I love them, as much as I wish you just wish you could hold on to those vehicles forever, right? And you could have them forever. Both of those vehicles are sitting in a junkyard in Gering, Nebraska right now. 15 years later, they're sitting in a junkyard in Gering, Nebraska. They're being parted out for somebody else's car. You know, I would love to have like a 60s or 70s model pickup in good shape, but the reality is for all of these things that we put a lot of value in, whether it be vehicles or anything else, the reality is that most everything is going to rust away. It's going to end up in a junkyard. It's going to end up at the dump at some point in its life. And this isn't new information for us, right? Like this isn't groundbreaking information. At some level, we get this. We know, we understand that everything that we have, everything that we get, whether it be money or homes or cars or jewelry or technology or whatever the case may be, everything has a lifespan. Everything at some point is going to end up in the trash, in the junkyard. And as we're talking about stewardship, at the heart of stewardship, at the heart of what we know and what we understand, whether it be about money or resources or the stuff that we have, this is so much bigger of a conversation than just money. Stewardship is at the heart of everything we have and everything we use. Stewardship is at the heart of everything that we have. God cares about how we view and how we use everything that we have, not just money. And so as we wrap up stewardship and our conversation about stewardship this morning, we want to broaden the picture a little bit to where it's not just about money. This is about everything that we have. Let's explore this out a little bit this morning. Matthew chapter 6. That's where we're going to start, and we're going to land here throughout the morning as well. Matthew chapter 6, let's just look at verse 19 here together. Jesus says this. He says, "Don't collect for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal." Like, this is not revolutionary conversation here, right? Like, this is not something that, people hear this and suddenly a revival takes place around him. This is not anything new. People understand this. This is the way the world is and the world works. Everything that we have, that we possess currently, is that everything that we chase after, everything will end up in a landfill someday. Everything will be destroyed. Everything will rust away. It doesn't matter what you do with it. It doesn't matter how well you take care of it or whether you keep it in perfect shape or not. Everything you have or everything you chase after in your life one day will end up in the trash or in the landfill or in the dumpster. Or, Jesus says, if it doesn't end up there, it's going to rust away somewhere, or it's going to get eaten up by some animal, or somebody's going to break in and take it away from you. In the end, it's going to be trash, though. In the end, it's ultimately going to go away. Everything we have will one day not be desirable anymore. It's just a matter of time. And this is not just one little thing found in Scripture. Scripture is saturated with this understanding about how things kind of just deteriorate over time. 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 16 through about 18. It says this, "Therefore, we do not give up. Even though our outer person is being destroyed, our inner person is being renewed day by day." This is just another example of the bad that is happening around us. Our bodies outwardly are wasting away. Inwardly, though, we are being renewed day by day. Paul continues on, verse 17. "For our momentary light affliction is producing for us an absolutely incomparable eternal weight of glory. So, we do not focus on what is seen, but on what is unseen. For what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal." Everything seen, the things that we can touch, the tangible things, the things we can feel, is on its way to destruction. But there is a world that is unseen, and that is eternal. Let's look at Psalms chapter 49, verse 16 and 17. It says this, "Do not be afraid when a man gets rich, when the wealth of his house increases, for when he dies, he will take nothing at all. His wealth will not follow him down." You know, there's a level where glory, the worldly kind of view of glory increases the more money you get, right? The more stuff you have, the more money you have in your bank account, the more glory you get. Like, it gets you into certain places, it gets you certain recognition, you get certain privileges, the more money and the more wealth that you get, right? It's like when you get a nice new car and you pull into the parking lot or up to a friend's house in the new car, and everybody's out there looking at the new car, right? And they come up and, "Oh, can I drive your car? Can I take it around the block? Can I take it for a spin?" Everybody wants to drive the new car. There's glory attached to increasing your wealth or the appearance of wealth. But what the psalmist says here is that glory does not follow you beyond the grave. That glory stops the minute you die. God doesn't recognize your sweet ride you have sitting in your driveway when you're standing before Him in heaven. Proverbs chapter 23 continues on with this, verse 4 and 5. "Don't wear yourself out to get rich. Stop giving your attention to it. As soon as your eyes fly to it, it disappears. For it makes wings for itself and flies like an eagle to the sky." He says, don't make your sole priority in life getting rich, because you will kill yourself in the process of trying to get rich. It's like the NFL quarterback who wants to get the big paycheck because he's the quarterback, right? He's the guy calling the shots out there on the field. And so he gets the big paycheck, and yet every time that the ball is snapped, he's getting killed, he's getting sacked because the team can't afford to pay him enough to pay enough money to get a good offensive line to protect him. We chase after riches so much that sometimes we kill ourselves in the process. We do this too. We say, we want to just get a little bit more money. I just want to get paid $20 an hour, and then that'll be enough. And then that turns into $40 an hour. Or maybe I want to build my retirement to $1 million, and then I'll be fine then. And then you get to that, and you say, no, I want to build it to $2 million, and then $5 million, and on and on and on. And we keep chasing and chasing it, and it flies away to something bigger. How much is enough? How much is enough? John D. Rockefeller was presented with that question at the height of his personal wealth in the oil industry. And he responded to the question, how much is enough, this way. He said, just one more dollar. Just one more dollar. And here's the reality. Wealth, riches, things we get, it's just an illusion. It's a never-stopping, ever-moving target, right? It's not something that you really ever achieve. Think about it. No matter where you land on the economic scale, there is somebody looking up to you saying, man, I wish I had what they had. I wish I had the income that they had. I wish I had the resources that they had. I wish I had their riches. If I only had their finances, I would be at peace. I would be content. I would be able to rest. No matter where you are at today, there's somebody looking up to you, wishing and desiring they had what you have. And maybe you don't land in that camp. Maybe you don't land in the camp of chasing after riches necessarily. Maybe you don't spend your time, chasing something that won't even last once we are gone from here. So many times we equate our worth with the way that people see us around us. People around us see us. Maybe we compare ourselves to each other. Maybe we try to have all the stuff, all the nicest stuff, and it's stressful trying to keep up with that lifestyle. You get something, eventually it breaks. You want a new model. You want the upgraded version when it comes out. The clothes we wear, we feel like it impacts people around us, and so we have to keep getting new stuff. Or where we live, we have to have the nicest house or the best model. We have to have the highest education. We have to have the best job title. We have to put our kids in the right events or the right things. They have to go to the right colleges. They have to play on the right teams. They have to get the right grades. And we compare ourselves to other people around us, and our worth is defined by that. And we end up in great debt because we simply have been trying to control how people see us. If you're spending your money and you don't have things, if you're spending your money, you don't have, let's move on. Your treasure is not in heaven if you're spending money on things that you don't need. Your treasure's not in heaven if you spend your money on things you don't need. And if it's not the comparison game we play, and if it's not the chasing after that we play, maybe our desire is simply to live a comfortable life. It's not comparing, it's not chasing after wealth. We simply want everything easy in our lives. And maybe we fall into that category. We want a life of ease. We want a life of comfort. Some of us, we don't necessarily care how people see us around us, but you absolutely care how you see you. You absolutely care how easy your life is. You absolutely care how comfortable your life is. You want the backup camera on your pickup so you don't have to get out to adjust to see where you're at and hooking up a trailer. You want the remote starter so you don't have to go out into the cold. I was thinking that this morning for sure. You want the computer in your car to tell you when it needs to get serviced. And we can expand this out. I have sat in my home on a day where we need to go to the grocery store wishing that I could have my groceries delivered to my front door. We pay for services in order to deliver items in 2 days, and we get upset when it shows up in 3 days. We get upset when internet speeds are not fast enough and we have to wait for something to download. We want to drive through and have somebody else make our coffee for us because we don't want to get up and make it ourselves. We don't want to pull out our wallet in order to pay for something. We just want to hold our phone up to a little thing and have it pay for us. No matter where we fall in this, we can find ourselves using our money and resources, whether it be in a comparison game or just simply trying to make our lives easier, more comfortable for us. Matthew chapter 6 deals with this no matter where you land on this. So let's go back to Matthew chapter 6. Verse 19 again, don't collect for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal. But collect for yourselves treasures in heaven where neither moth nor rust destroys and where thieves don't break in and steal. Like, you catch that there? He threw out the flip side of that. Verse 19 says, not to collect treasures on earth, but to do what? Verse 20, collect treasures in heaven. Well, what does that even mean? Like, what does it mean to build up treasures in heaven? I mean, I've read this like dozens of times, and I've gotten to the place sometimes where I just don't know what that means. So what does it mean to collect treasures in heaven? Well, let's look at Luke chapter 12, verse 32 through 34. Jesus says this, don't be afraid, little flock, because your Father delights to give you the kingdom. Sell your possessions and give to the poor. Make the money bags for yourselves that won't grow old, an inexhaustible treasure in heaven, where no thief comes near and no moth destroys. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Translation is this, worldly possessions have been given to you so that we can redistribute them in a way that honors God and builds His kingdom. What we have been given in our life is not for us to hold tight to us, but it's so that we can give it away and give glory to God and build God's kingdom. It's an open hand concept here. This is someone that sees a need in the moment and does what it takes to fill that need. And the reward is not necessarily here this side of eternity. The reward is somewhere else. It's collecting up treasures in heaven. Luke chapter 14, verse 13 and 14 says this, on the contrary, when you host a banquet, invite those who are poor, maimed, and lame, or blind, and you will be blessed because they cannot repay you, for you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous. This is not a networking thing. This is not like building up credibility or anything like that. It's giving to and loving on and showing grace to people who have absolutely no way of paying you back. And why do we do this? Well, because of the future economy that we're paying into in heaven. There are times where you see people on the side of the road, or the Spirit pushes me to do something for someone. And honestly, I don't always obey that sometimes. Sometimes it's buying a guy a burger on the side of the road. Sometimes it's giving a woman all the cash you have in your wallet. Whatever the case may be, what happens is I hesitate. I don't know. I logically try and think through it sometimes, and I think, well, what's going to happen with this? Like, if I give a person money who's standing on the side of the road, what are they going to do with it? Are they going to go buy cigarettes? Are they going to go buy some alcohol? Are they trying to take advantage of me? Are they being truthful? Like, are they going to take my money and go walk down the road to the Beamer or that they parked down the road? Or what are they doing? Am I enabling them to continue in this life? Worldly wisdom says, for me at least, to be cautious in this. And so I would say more times than not, I suppress what the Spirit is telling me to do. But sometimes God calls us to do things that does not make sense logically. Sometimes God calls us to do things that does not make sense logically. Like when God called Joshua to take a marching band and walk around Jericho a few times. Didn't make sense logically. It was not a great military strategy. It was not wise. But we aren't talking about what wisdom always says. We're talking about obedience to God. And sometimes obedience and logic do not fit into the same category. So back to Matthew chapter 6. Verse 19, don't collect for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but collect for yourselves treasures in heaven where neither moth nor rust destroys and where thieves don't break in and steal. Verse 21, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. This is why it's so important to know where your treasure is, because it's a reflection of where your heart is in reality. Where your treasure is where your heart is. Where your affections are, where your emotions are, where your dedication is, that's where your heart will be also. Continue reading verse 22 and 23. The eye is the lamp of the body. If your eye is good, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. So if the light within you is darkness, how deep is that darkness? And here's the reality for us. What we have our eyes set on is ultimately what we are about as people. If we have our eyes set on earthly things, our minds will justify whatever it takes to get those earthly things, to gain those things. If we have our eyes set on God and what is good, our minds will do whatever it takes to live that life and gain God. At its core, this struggle is a struggle of idolatry. We are wanting things above God in our lives. We are wanting things like money or status or wealth or homes or tools or electronics above God in our lives. We are putting other things above God. We are prioritizing other things above God in our lives. Verse 24. No one can be a slave to two masters, since either he will hate one and love the other, or be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot be slaves of God and of money. And at this point in the conversation, we usually start talking only about money, right? The conversation goes to, so how are you managing your money, or what are you doing with it? Are you chasing wealth only? And we start talking about just money, and we live in a world where the reality is there's a lot of money floating around, right? We have a lot of money, and we start to try to justify it, and we say, well, maybe if I just got a little bit more money, I would be able to do more ministry. I mean, think about the ministry I could do if I just made a little bit more money. God has never needed our money. God doesn't need a credit line or a bank account to accomplish His purposes in this world. He doesn't need our money in order to build His kingdom. More money doesn't always equal more ministry. And there's a common trait in money and in God. It craves submission and it craves lordship. Either we are in submission to God and He is Lord in our lives, or we are in submission to money and resources and the stuff around us, and it's Lord in our life. And it's not just money. Either we're in submission to God and everything that we have, including our money and our talents and our work and our family and our free time, our retirement, our school. Everything is under God's lordship. We submit everything to Him. Or money or the other things in our life are in control, and we submit everything to it. You can't have both. This conversation about stewardship, about using what we have for the kingdom, it's larger than just money. We only talk about money in as much as it reveals what's going on in our hearts. We're not asking for a building fund or starting a campaign of any kind. I only care about you. I only care about what's going on in your heart. I want the best for us. And so the reality is we have to ask the question, do we believe the Bible? If the Bible says, forego our treasure here for a sliver of life and for eternity, then we should do that. And I want to do everything in my power to show you the reality that doing it God's way is the best. And so we're talking about more than just money here. What we're really talking about is what do we value in life? What's most important in our life? What's going on in our heart? What do you treasure? What do you go after? What do you seek most importantly in your life? The things that are most important in our life, the things that we put the most effort into and the most time into and the most resources into, the treasures we have in our life, that is where your heart is. And I desire for you to have a heart that is turned towards God alone. Having a lot of money doesn't make you a sinner. Having a big house doesn't make you a sinner. Having nice stuff doesn't make you a sinner. People who sit and judge others, the super spiritual people who look down on people who have much, ironically, their pride is getting in the way of them realizing that they are just lusting after what somebody else has. It's about where your heart is. It's about where your treasure is. It's about what you have set your eyes on. Where are you putting your time and your resources? What are you putting your time and your resources towards? It does matter. Are you investing in things here that rust away, that end up in a dump, that get thrown in the trash? Or are you investing in places where nothing can happen to it, the other side of eternity? Do you see what you have as yours and you hold on to it personally, you hold on to it with a closed fist? Or do you see what you have been given to use for God's glory and to build His kingdom? We must ask ourselves these questions. We must really look at our lives and our hearts and ask what is really going on inside of us. Where is your treasure? Where is your affection? Where is your mind? Where are your eyes set? What are you captivated by? What do you pursue in life? If it's truly anything other than God, it's idolatry. Pay into the future economy. Collect up for the future economy, not the economy this side of eternity that gets thrown in a dump, that rusts away, that gets eaten up. Let's pray. God, I'm thankful just for this time that we've gotten to explore this topic of stewardship that is so much bigger than money, it's so much bigger than just the dollars that we have in our bank account, but this is really everything that we have in life. And it's easy, I know, for me to just get focused on what I have and building up my little kingdom, when in reality you call us to something so much bigger, that everything that you have given us is really yours, that I'm in charge of managing. And it's ultimately given to me so that I can give it away, that I can use it for your kingdom and your glory. And so, Father, help us to have that heart, help us to have our eyes set on that first and most importantly. God, I thank you for Jesus. I thank you for these words that he said that still convict 2,000 years later. I just pray that we would take this to heart during the season of Christmas where everything is so focused on me and so focused on gaining for myself, that we would change our attitudes toward this and make it about giving. Make it about being generous, and ultimately make it about pointing people towards you. We thank you for what Jesus did for us on the cross, and it's through his name that I pray. Amen.